You're watching The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales. Streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
2, 1.
We didn't really talk about what we were going to do for our cold opening. So, we're going to do this. See, what's the deal with ratios? Also, man hands. Like, okay. I told him I'd do it. I'm done doing it. We're not doing it anymore. Look, it's been a long weekend for Jay and I. I am very punchy. And we're talking about something that has to do with math. This is going to get ugly. Ugh. So, today's topic is comic book ratios and why ratios are ratios. And I don't know how to feel. So, let's get into it. This is Devil's Advocates.
Hey, Kyle.
What's going on, buddy?
Hey, everybody in chat. Not too much. Just finished up some lovely dinner. Tried to skedaddle my kiddo upstairs so we could talk about ratios here on the EXP.
Don't talk to me about dinner.
Yeah, I hear you. But it was either feed the wife before I have to kick her out of the shared common area or face the wrath of a hungry wife.
Or you could let her play Fortnite in the background and I could just watch that.
Yeah, but then my kid would be running around and I don't generally do that.
That's fair. So, I guess this is one of those topics that, like, I feel like you are going to be better off setting up than I am. Only in as much as I have this weird relationship with the word variant that I guess we need to sort out, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so here's how I'll set it up. We wanted to keep the topic focused, and one of our viewer comments and suggestions for a video was specifically about incentives and ratios. But I think that we're going to be slightly broader on this topic and also cover variants a little bit to a degree, maybe exclusive covers. I think it's all kind of part of the same wheel that we need to discuss, the same wheelhouse for sure. And we'll put a primary focus on answering that question from that viewer about ratios and exclusives and how it affects the market and whether it's good or not for the comic industry, those sorts of things. But I think that there's some core issues here for the industry. And I say the industry very carefully because I don't want to say for collectors. I don't want to say for retailers, because there's elements to this that I think are good and bad for retailers, elements that I think are good and bad for some collectors. Collectors are going to feel differently, of course. And since I'm talking about the collector side of things, I can speak to that a little bit, but we also have our chat. We're really going to be looking to you for giving us your opinions on ratios, variants, exclusives, all those sorts of things. But I think that the real nucleus of this conversation can be boiled down into the idea of, is more better or is more worse? And we can kind of discuss each aspect of that. But in my point there being, when you have a 1 in 5, or sometimes even a 1 in 2, a 1 in 5, a 1 in 10, a 1 in 15, a 1 in 20, a 1 in 50, a 1 in 100, a 1 in 500, a 1 in 1,000. Plus you have 16 different retailers doing exclusive for that particular comic book. Maybe you have anywhere between 5 and 10 variants that are from the main publisher themselves. In addition to that, you're starting to look at a very large number of covers for that particular issue of comic book. And the thing to keep in mind is when you couple this with exclusives, which is why I feel like we have to talk about this. If you don't know, here's what retailers do. If they buy from, let's say there's a publishers out there that make you buy 3,000 trade and 3,000 virgin print run, because that's the minimum they'll let you go print. Even if that's not what you sell, even if you go sell 3,000 of the trade and you sell 1,000 of the virgin or 500 of the virgin, you still got to go get those printed. So you still have to order that number of comic books. So if you order 3,000 comic books of, Acme Superhero #1, guess what? You can also order 30 1 in 100s of that if there's a 1 in 100 for that particular issue, just baked into your order of the exclusive.
Question.
God.
Are we actually talking about ratios or are we talking about variance?
So I think what we need to do is we're going to...
There's a difference. It's an important difference.
There's a very important difference, but there's some crossover in the issues of talking about ratios and variance get kind of mixed in that, because the number of variants directly is going to affect the number of ratios that are out there, especially when you're talking about exclusives.
Well, and that's why I think it's important to know the difference, right? And I think so often when we hear these debates about ratios versus variance versus whatever, people who are talking don't know the difference.
Yeah.
Right? And if you don't know the difference, then you're generally making false analogies, right? You're not drawing a one-to-one. And that's why I asked, because ratios in and of themselves are one set of issues for the industry. And I don't think they're good or bad. I don't think they're problematic or not. They're just one set of issues. Conversely, variants are a different set of issues. And while some of those are the same, they're different.
Yeah.
What I think we need to maybe start with then, just based on what you were just saying, is define some terms.
Sure, of course.
So a ratio is an open order variant that is gated.
Yeah.
You can order one of these for every X number you order of the regular book. It's open order. You could choose to order as many as you want, or you could choose to order as few as you want. Right? But you have to qualify for that order.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas a variant is a cover that is either open order or sometimes gated or sometimes specific, that is a separate cover that has different set of qualifications. So I want you to understand, if I want to make a variant of a book, there's nothing that can stop me from making a variant. Right? The other part of that, though, is that if I then want to order the 1 in 100 cover, I still have to qualify.
Right.
And so when we talk about variants, I'm going to start with some examples to kind of qualify the difference, right? Dynamite is putting out like 90 plus covers of Thundercats. Only 4 or 5 of those are variants.
Right.
So many of the covers are just different versions of the same art. There's 5 variants or 6 variants, and then there's 85 different ratios that you can qualify for. Right? So, and while those ratio variants are still variants, they're different variants. They're different kinds of things. So we need to separate the two, because there is a big problem with variants right now, which is the Wild West. People are creating variants specifically to corner the flipper market.
Yeah.
To corner the reseller market, to corner the I got on key collector market.
Yeah.
Right? And then there's another part of the industry that's making variants with the specific intent of I want my own thing to be able to sell of this thing. And then there's another portion of the market that are making variants because people are buying them.
Yeah.
So then ratios don't actually get made if nobody buys them. Ratios don't actually exist if nobody qualifies for them. The 1 in 1,000 Berserker variants would not have been printed if people weren't buying 1,000 copies of Berserker. Right? It's a different process. And you mentioned exclusives. Exclusives are a whole other game that have a whole other set of rules and qualifications that make them impossible. Right? Marvel requires you order 3,000 copies of a book to get an exclusive variant. Source Point Press requires 100. Like, the thing about exclusives is that it's almost like making your own comic in a big way, but your clout is based off of somebody else's work. So when you order an exclusive, that number doesn't count towards the print through or the sell through. Doesn't count in the retailer numbers. Doesn't count in all that stuff because it's your business, right?
But it does count for that individual account to be able to order the thresholded copies.
Not with Marvel. At least it didn't used to be.
I
4
feel
years
like
ago,
I've heard differently. Now I know that you definitely have firsthand experience, but I've heard differently from sources that I trust.
Post COVID, it could be. I don't know. But when I did my exclusives with Marvel, they did not count. But Marvel wasn't doing ratios at the time.
Right. Okay.
Right? So it's this idea of the rules are constantly changing.
Yeah. And I mean, the other thing too that kind of that makes this even more messy is the kind of the concept of unlockables, which it used to be a much bigger deal than it is now. I think ratios have kind of largely taken over the unlockables, but this is like, if you ordered so many copies of this, you could also get this special unique version of this issue kind of thing, right?
So
and this is similar in that respect, in that that's how you get to the threshold to order the 1 in 100 or the 1 in 50 or whatever you qualify for.
Maybe this is a bad topic because I think we really need to talk about each of the individual terms individually as a show. Marvel used to do a thing that I really hated and that everyone really hated, which were called Marvel math or meet or exceed variants, right? So you would have to meet or exceed your order on a previous issue to qualify for oftentimes the cover your customers wanted.
Right.
So that's one way that variants were handled. And then DC decided they weren't going to get in that game. And they started doing a variant cover, which was just the second cover for the book. It was open order, but they would do it as a vegan trade dress, right? It would have the DC logo on the cover, but maybe nothing else.
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't completely without trade dress, but it wasn't fully trade dressed.
Minimal trade dress.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was one of the changes. But what you find happening is that these publishers are essentially writing the rules based on the order. Right? How you order or who orders have different rules than other people.
Yeah.
It's not a standard practice. So if I'm Midtown Comics, and I'm going to use Midtown Comics because they're a big enough store that everyone's going to recognize Midtown Comics, I'm not saying Midtown Comics does this. Okay? I just put that out there. Because I don't believe they do. Right? If I'm Midtown Comics and I go to Marvel and I want to do an exclusive, Marvel might only make me order 1,000 because I'm doing 60 exclusives a year. Right? Because of the volume I'm doing overall, I have a different set of rules than Kyle in Toledo has, who does one exclusive a year. And that in and of itself is part of the trouble here, right? Because you see these variants, these exclusives happening from over and over and over. Everybody's got an exclusive for everything, right? But it's not a level playing field. So when we talk about variants, we have to be very specific and talk about what is the variance, right? So one ends in a T and one's in an ICE. We talk about variants. We talk about variance. And it makes it very difficult to kind of put your finger on where the problems lie.
Yeah, it does. And then that's why the disconnect might be a little bit that I'm coming from a concept where I think we need context to this conversation, because if we talk about, hey, ratios are bad for one segment of the industry, and we want to talk about that, which is fine, and we can take that point, we can analyze where it might be harmful or there might be a better solution. We do have to talk about like what came before, right? Like what was, if you talk about Marvel, what were they doing before ratios, and now what could they possibly be doing that's better? So I think we need to kind of talk about it in terms of, yes, maybe we want to move away from a system, or maybe we decide, hey, it's better to do it this way rather than that way. But if we have rules or systems in place, we got to talk about, well, what were they doing before, and what are they likely to go back to, and how do we avoid that? So that's kind of why, like I would mention the previous systems, and also keeping in mind that ratios, even though we are talking about ratios and incentives, same thing in this case, it
Not
really
always, sure. For our purposes, we will call them the same thing.
Yeah.
For our purposes, we'll call them the same thing.
Yeah. But as far as talking about those go, they don't exist in a vacuum, right? Like it's not like there's the A cover and then there's these number of ratios. That rarely is the case, because rarely, generally speaking, what it is doing is partially contributing to the fact that there are many covers for one particular issue, which is something that I think is something that a lot of collectors are concerned about. I think is a fair way to say that, as we've seen that balloon over time. And maybe we should talk about why they should or shouldn't be as part of that as well. But it all does tie into the fact that there's more ratios out there.
Right. And I think we should talk about the hypocrisy of collectors being concerned about that.
To an extent,
it's a fair concern, but guess what? If people weren't buying them, these companies wouldn't make them. So if you're concerned about it, stop buying them. But you're not going to do that, because then you don't have that money. You don't have that flip. You can't flip it. Or then you don't have that exclusive variant or that rare variant or that.
Well, okay. So here's what we should do.
You can't have your cake and eat it too with these things.
My opinion is we should start on this aspect from a retailer shop, like an LCS shop perspective. Let's say a shop that isn't doing exclusives. They're just doing their Diamond and Penguin Random House orders. And I'm going to pick on Marvel because they have the broadest model for this, I feel like. And I think it's something that we can mostly kind of recognize as collectors, as retailers, as sellers, is the benefit to the retailer when it comes to receiving those ratios. Do you think that's generally positive for retailers because they can recoup some of the money from, maybe copies that don't sell, that sort of thing? Do you think that's generally negative? How do you feel about that from the retailer perspective, in that case, the LCS?
Don't buy them.
So you think the LCS shop shouldn't buy them?
I think no.
Okay.
You've asked me a question that is a very tricky question.
Mm-hmm.
And here's what I mean. Variants as a whole are bad for retailers. Period. More than one cover per comic is bad for retailers. Period. There is no world where more than one cover is good for retailers, because then retailers have to try to read the minds of their customers. Who's going to want what? Right? And most customers aren't coming into stores and pre-ordering.
Right.
Right? They're saying, oh, I want to get Supergirl, but they're not saying I want to get only the Supergirl B covers, or I want to get only the David Nakayama Dynamite covers. They're just saying I want Vampirella or whatever. They're not pre-ordering in a way that tells retailers what they want. So the fact that there are options means retailers are gambling with their livelihoods.
It's splintering their inventory for that particular comic.
It's not even that. They are literally gambling with their livelihoods.
Well, no. Yeah, but I'm making a separate point.
Well, the reality is that I, as a retailer, stopped ordering variants at one point. I ordered one cover. If you don't like it, don't buy the book. Because I needed to see how much money I would save. And what I learned is, very simply, I would save a lot of money, but I would lose a lot of customers. Right? So now I have to decide, how much am I willing to risk of my future to make my customers happy? right? And so I'm not only, because I'm already segmenting my inventory 125 different ways, because I can't just carry Spider-Man comics. I've got to carry Spider-Man comics, Spider-Man lunchboxes, Spider-Man t-shirts, Spider-Man blah, 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 Spider-Man blah, blah, blah. I've got to segment my inventory that way. But now I've got to segment it 5 or 6 different ways in comics.
Yeah.
Right? So
if you're
the
lucky.
reality is, right, there is no way when there's more than one cover that a retailer is not essentially taking food off their own table. Because you can't sell through. You just can't. So then when you start talking about Marvel math, the old school way, and this is where I'm going with it. I'm getting where we're going.
No, yeah, I'm listening.
You start talking about Marvel math. Now I have to decide, is it worth it for me to order 125 copies of Deadpool so that the lenticular Deadpool cover is available? Because I know I'm going to sell 100 of those, but I'm going to eat 125 of this other one. And by the way, I still have to pay the regular price for the other stuff.
Yeah,
so
and they're not returnable.
Right. Well, no, it's if I'm paying $1.25 a piece for a book, right? Let's just make it an easy number. We'll make it $1 a piece for a book. And I have to order 125. Then I know my 100 customers who buy Deadpool are going to want the lenticular variant, right? That I've unlocked by ordering 125. I have to order 100 copies of that at $1 a piece. So now instead of spending $100 a month on Deadpool, I'm spending $225 a month on Deadpool.
Yeah, but the reason I'm mentioning that they're not returnable, Kyle, is because a lot of people remember the days where stock was returnable and you could get credit back on your account. Or
even if they're returnable, you don't get the money back.
Usually you can get credit towards a future order, though, right?
It doesn't cover that. No lie. This is where the real bullshit happens. Oftentimes, the money you get back doesn't cover the additional shipping you've had to pay to get the extra books.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So you're losing money even on returns.
Yeah.
Right.
Back when because now Penguin Random House has free shipping.
Right.
But they're also not doing returns at all anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
You can return to Penguin Random House, but then you don't get free shipping.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
Your discount actually goes down. You go from a 50% discount to a 48% discount to get free shipping, and then you give up returnability. So you're eating something like twice the price.
Right. And I mean, most shops, I can't imagine any shops are really going to want to do that.
Now, when you sell a book for $4.99, you're actually losing 25 cents.
Yeah.
Like, there is no world where variants are good for retailers. It just doesn't exist. However, where retailers take that gamble is it's betting on the Super Bowl before the season starts.
Yeah.
I'm betting on my customers coming in and buying these books and then also buying the stuff where I have bigger margin. Right? If you just come in and buy your comics, you're the worst kind of customer. Especially if you're a variant buyer. And here's what I mean by that. I don't mean you're a bad customer. You're the worst kind of customer. All customers are good customers. But, on the scale of great to bad, you're the bad. Because I'm not making any money off of you.
Yeah.
I'm not even paying to keep the lights on. If you just are buying comics, I need you to buy t-shirts and lunchboxes and piggy banks and dice sets and posters. And
if they're buying new comics only, like if they're hitting your back issues too, that's a little bit different too, because you have different margins on those depending, and trade paperbacks and
trade paperbacks are another one that's a great. If you're buying trade paperbacks, that's great. Back issues though, I've already lost my shirt on because I had to buy those the first time, and now they've sat, and I've likely had to discount them to get you to buy them as back issues.
Right, but
so all you're doing is like.
Yeah, it depends on the retailer, it depends on the buyer or whatever. But I think in most cases, a shop owner is probably going to be happy if you're coming in, buying new comics, and then taking a bunch of those back issues out of their inventory as well.
Sure.
Right? I mean, that's better than just buying the new comics.
But what I want you to understand is this, right? I love it when you buy back issues, but I spent we'll do it this way. I spend $1,000 a week on new comics. Okay, I have $500 worth of back issues at the end of the week, just to keep the numbers round.
Mm-hmm.
They sit in a back issue bin for however long. Meanwhile, I have to keep paying diamond bills. I have to keep paying lights. I have to keep paying employees. I have to keep paying insurance. I have to keep paying water. I have to keep paying all this other stuff. So now that comic that cost me $1.25 when I bought it that didn't sell has cost me $6.25 by the time you bought it. And if I sell it to you for $4, which is the cover price, I've still lost $2.25. Like, stores that order to sell out are doing it because it's the only way to stay alive.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm not ordering enough. I'm ordering less than I know I could sell so that I make sure I sell everything. So I'm not taking a bath on the stuff that's sitting around. Like,
okay. And so to be clear, I'm making one distinction here too. I'm not talking about old new stock as far as back issues. I'm talking about stores that specialize in buying collections and picking up back issues in that method.
Again, that's where that nuance comes in, right? Because the truth of the matter is that even on a collection purchase, there's a good chance you're going to lose money. Like,
yeah, right. It's very possible.
There aren't rich comic book retailers.
Yeah.
They just aren't. They don't exist. And the ones that are rich are the ones that have figured out how to capitalize on the people who aren't. I look at a guy, there's a retailer in Florida who does very well for himself. And the reason he's able to do very well for himself is that when somebody else closes, he just buys their inventory and leaves their store open.
Yeah.
And puts his people in. So he's not actually doing anything to make more money. He's just absorbing the low-hanging fruit, right? So again, when we talk about retailers, the understanding that retailers are, and we had this conversation. We kind of had this conversation. We talked about our retailer health check.
Yeah, parts of it for sure.
The idea that retailers are here because of the customers is one that needs to go away. Retailers are here because we love the same thing the customers love. Right? But at the end of the day, Stuart from The Big Bang Theory, who's living in his comic shop and not able to get health insurance and can't afford to eat and, has all of these problems, is closer to the reality than Comic Book Man from The Simpsons is. And part of that is because of the predatory practices that these publishers have instigated in variants. If the only book that's worth a damn that anybody's hunting for of a certain title is a variant, every retailer who doesn't have that variant is sitting on product that they can't sell. Right? If I don't order the Peach Momoko variant of a Marvel book, and that's the only book people are looking for, they're going to put back their pull list copies so that they can go somewhere else and buy the Peach Momoko cover.
Yeah.
Now guaranteed money that I was counting on is gone.
Yeah.
And money I've spent is gone. And I still have to pay all of my bills. So again, any addition to one cover is a terrible, terrible risk to have to take. So I think ratios are a great middle ground because they do sell, but it lets me on some level it lets me mitigate my risk. Yeah,
that's fair. And that's actually where you're going with that, or where you landed with that. That's one of the middle ground solutions that I would have proposed or will propose later in the show, possibly. And just to kind of recap then where I agree with you on this is if the idea is there's only an A cover and there's also ratio covers that are available as well on top of that. And I don't even care if you go for the strat of 1 and 2, 1 and 5, 1 and 10, and go through all the ridiculous combinations there. If that's the way to get the cover and that's how you want to do it, I have more respect for that. I can live with that system more than having, 30 base covers or 50 base covers or whatever for that comic book, including, the exclusives and all the different makeup of the regular variants that are, easier barrier to entry, and then having the ratios on top of that as well. I think that's created a glut of covers for these particular books, and problems for retailers and collectors and in general as it is.
The other thing that was happening back when I started, and it's gone away a little bit, but there are still publishers who do it. And sometimes there are publishers who don't normally do it on specific instances, is your ratios are determined by the cover you order. So you have to order 10 of the A cover to get the ratios, or 50 of the A cover. Whereas there are other publishers who have done, if you order 50 of the A through C, which are open order anyway, now you can order the 1 in 50, which is still better, because now what I can do is I can say, okay, I have 50 people who buy this book on my pull list. Great. I'm going to order 50 of the A, and I'm going to order the 1 in 50 variant. Okay, great. But then there's a B and C. So I can order 2 of the B, 2 of the C, and just put those on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And now my risk is mitigated because I can charge enough for that 1 in 50 variant to cover those 2 books.
Yeah.
Right. So the more you can add to your order, the more you can add to your qualifier, the less risky it is, but it's still risky.
Mm-hmm. So
a prime example is Image did these a while back, and I thought they were great, and they sold for shit. Were gold foil trade dress variants. So you get the number, you get the Walking Dead issue, and the trade dress was gold. Yeah. And it was like 1 in 10. Right? It wasn't like, if you were at this point, if you were only ordering 10 Walking Dead books, it was because like your primary customers were 6-year-olds. Right? Like
or
this was
the apocalypse happened in your area.
Well, right. This was the height of The Walking Dead, where every store was ordering 100 Walking Dead, right? Like we're ordering ridiculous numbers of Walking Dead.
Yeah.
And what you could do is, again, most of the stores that I know mark up their ratios a percentage or an amount. So the way I did it, and I made my customers aware of this, if it's a 1 in 10 variant, it's $10. If it's a 1 in 25 variant, it's $25. Yeah. 1 in 50 is $50. Just to keep it easy. Right?
That's commonly referred to as paying ratio, at least in the aftermarket. Right.
Yeah. And the reason I did that was because that way I could cover any additional unsold copies. So, sorry, I thought I was going to choke there for a second. But what happened with these is for about a day and a half, they would be high. You could sell them for whatever you were asking. And then they would tank out and nobody wanted to pay more than cover. So if I ordered up to get this thing, I was eating it. Yeah. So what did I do? I just didn't order them. And then Image comes out and says, why are nobody ordering these things? And we go, because the market wouldn't hold for them. And they stopped doing it. What you find, what I found, and what my experience is when I talk to other retailers, and I talk to them all the time about this, is that there is the only variant practice that makes sense is to make the variants free if you're going to gatekeep them. So if you order 50 copies, you get a free 1 in 50 variant.
Oh, right. Okay, I get you.
Because now I can, if I only sell 25 copies, I can order 50.
Yeah.
Charge enough for the variant to cover the 25 I'm eating and give the 25 away for free.
Yeah.
Or give the 25, sell the 25 for $1. There have been companies who have done that. Aftershock and some of these companies have done, if you order 10, not only are unsold copies returnable, but all right, Ship, I'm going to put you in timeout, man. Not only are 10 copies returnable, but you get a 1 in 10 variant. Right? And you don't pay anything for it. Because now that 1 in 10 variant is pure profit. And you can afford to maybe not return everything.
Right.
So there have been mechanisms that have been tried and they've worked, but then they only can work if you're a publisher of a certain size.
Very true.
And so what you find happening to retailers, and this is again why I think defining our terms and talking about each part of this individually would be super important, is Marvel and DC know they got you over a barrel. Right? These companies that are doing these variants know they have you over a barrel. They know that the only way you're going to keep your customers happy is to eat that money, and they know they're putting you out of business. But it's the only way to keep your customers happy, so you have to do it. And at the same time, these publishers are making money, so they're happy. So they don't care that they put you out of business. Like, the reason that I get fired up about this particular topic is we are losing comic book stores every day because publishers and distributors don't understand the actual numbers in comics. Right? They don't understand the actual amount of books that are being sold and to who they're being sold. And they don't understand what the secondary market looks like, let alone the tertiary market. And the tertiary market is a whole other demon. And that's what's driving this interest.
Yeah.
So we need to do two things. We need to stop making variants, and we need to stop secondary sellers or tertiary sellers. Otherwise, this thing is going to cannibalize itself. But you're never going to stop variants. You're never going to stop people from selling stuff. You know, buying something to sell it for profit. So now we need to limit the cannibalism. Right? They're always going to make variants because there's always going to be a, hey, you know, this looks really cool in black and white, so let's do a black and white variant, right? It's always going to be a thing because art is art and it's awesome. Mm-hmm. And you're never going to stop people from coming into a store and buying something for what they feel is a good price and then turning around and selling it for more money. You can't. It's impossible. So how do you limit the cannibalism? Right? Because they're just going to keep eating each other. The demand for these variants is going to keep driving the variants being made. And then the people who have to sell you the variants have to keep trying not to lose their shirt. But if they try to charge you what you're going to charge somebody on eBay for the book, you won't pay it. So how do you limit that? Am I like, if a book is selling for $50 for on eBay, and I charge you $50, are you going to buy it?
Some will.
Especially
in some cases.
If you're going to flip it?
Yeah. Not the flipper, but some people who are FOMO buyers will.
Sure. But
yeah. And by the way, they're the same end customer of that tertiary market anyway.
Right.
So, I mean, if you transition that to the comic book store, that would be better.
Right. So that's what I'm getting at, right? Like, your flippers are not going to pay that price. But the flippers are the ones buying most of these books. They're the ones waiting for you to open on Wednesday morning so they can come in and get these variants so they can have them listed before anybody has a chance to get to their comic book store and also buy these variants.
Yeah.
So what's the solution? The solution is to say, we're not going to make them anymore. It's the only solution. And it sucks. It really does. Do I think Dynamite is hurting the industry with 90 plus covers of Thundercats? Yes. Do I think they're the sole reason? No. Do I think they're doing their best in a bad situation? I absolutely do. And I don't judge them for that. This is one of those things that there is no good there is no good solution.
No, but I have some hesitation towards fully agreeing because it's kind of like, okay, do you want to live in a utopia? Sure. Is it realistic? No. So what can we do in like you said earlier, and I know you understand this, what can we do that would help mitigate the damage to certain, like especially the retailer? And that's to me, I see that as being one of the points of failure for this is what it can do to the retailer. I also see how it can be a detriment to some collectors as well, especially collectors that, and a lot of comic book collectors have this, a need to try to get everything or a need to complete everything. And you could argue like, oh, hey, well, if somebody wants to do that, more power to them, let them spend their money on it. And that is also fine. I mean, if people really want to spend their money on it, more power to them. But the other element we didn't talk about yet, by the way, which I do want to, is artists. Artists are also kind of involved in this because there's a lot of artists that get work on variant covers. My rebuttal to that point, because I know somebody will bring it up in chat at some point, if we talk about this long enough, is, hey, wouldn't it be cool if there was a way to get those really hot, in-demand variant cover artists to get them some extra work in some other way, like, oh, I don't know, doing interior pages on a comic book.
And I know that, and we all should know that that's a different skill set, right? Like it's very Lucio Perillo doing interior pages is a different skill set than Lucio Perillo doing covers. And I'm not saying he can't do both. I'm saying he shouldn't do both because he's great at both. I would love to
see both.
but it's a different thing, right? It's I give you a great example, and I'll just name him. Todd Nauck is a terrible interior artist. He can do it, but it takes him forever. I love it when he does it, but it takes him forever.
Yeah.
So let him do covers. But here's the thing. This is the thing. And I want to make this super clear. Variant cover artist is part of the problem. Be a cover artist. There are enough people out there making comics that if you try hard enough, you'll find work. Right?
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is this. Get these companies. The companies have to recognize that we're bleeding, that the world is bleeding, and come up with other ways to get this art or to keep the artists, right? Like, I'll never forget Neil Adams talking about he wasn't making enough doing comics, so he did advertising, right? You want to kill AI art? Flood the market with cheap, available, actual art, right? Because these guys aren't making a living doing 1.5 million variants on comics. They have to go and do other things like advertising art. You want to kill AI art? Infuse the world with affordable real art. And sometimes that means people don't get to work in comics anymore. And that's okay. We don't need 9 million people making covers. We do need people who can design reasonably priced art for the average consumer who needs something done. And
I mean, there's part of that though that it's kind of an all or nothing outlook on the topic. Whereas I think there is a happy medium ground, right? Because yes, you're right. There are people like a Perillo or maybe even like an Alan Qua or somebody like that who are going to excel at doing a cover, and that's maybe their bread and butter, and they should have those opportunities to do that, of course. But there are other artists out there, and this is where I won't get into naming names, who have become a cover-only artist who are capable of doing those interiors. And I think a lot of fans out there would love to see more of that from those artists instead of maybe some of the more middling work we do sometimes get into in interiors. It might help readers buy more of those comic books or want to be on that title more, which in turn might help the health of the comic book industry. And the reason I mention that is because to me, it's like the perfect answer. Like I said, you can live in a utopia if you want to, but you're going to sacrifice a lot in the process because a lot of people aren't going to be willing to help build that utopia. And the utopia in this idea would be just one cover for each comic and that's it, right? I don't see that happening anytime soon.
I'm fine with multiple covers, open order. I'm fine with, you want to do an A, B, and a C cover? Fine. You can do an A, B, and a C cover. But I'm just going to order Batman. Send me what you want. Right? Don't make it, this is the A cover by Art Germ and the B cover by David Nakayama and the C cover by, Alex Ross. Batman comes with 3 covers. These are the ones we got.
So you mean like an even fill, like it's 33, 33, 33 if there's those 3 covers?
Yeah.
And that's just the print run the way it works?
Right.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. I'm just addressing your point earlier that you made very clearly, which is variants are bad for the comic book retailer.
They are.
Right. So I'm talking about if you take that to its natural conclusion, that would be getting rid of variants, right?
Yes.
So that's where I'm coming from when I mentioned that point, is that we're not going to get to a point where we eliminate all variants, but I think we could get to a point, or we could, as a community, help foster the environment that leads to a point where they're limited to a degree where it's going to be better for collectors, retailers, and by extension of that, the comic book industry.
So I want to dissuade anyone from thinking that I think there's a happy medium. There isn't. There's making the best of the bad. Right? There is no medium where everyone will be happy. What we have to find is the best of the bad. So while you're unhappy, you're less unhappy than you used to be. Right? And while you may be unhappy now, you're not as unhappy as you could be. Right? Because killing variants is going to look to publishers like taking money out of their pocket, and look to artists like taking money out of their pocket, and look to flippers like taking money out of their pocket.
Yeah.
But if we don't do something, there will be no comic book retail. Period. In 3 years, we've lost a third of the shops. Like, I'm not kidding. In 3 years, we've lost a third of comic shops in this country. So in another 3 years, we lose another third. In another 3 years, we lose another third. In another 3. And eventually, there's going to be 2. Right? And nobody's going to be buying variants then because they won't be able to. So we have to find something that is the best of the bad. And I think the best of the bad is to say, if you're actively pursuing this, you recognize you're hurting people. And so you need to be able to buy variants direct. Here's the best of the bad. Take variants off of the direct market. Comic book stores can't carry variants. The only way you can get variants is to go to a publisher website and order directly from the publisher.
Yeah, that to me seems bad for retailers too, because if all the interest is in those direct from the publisher comic books, then...
But then I'm going to know as a retailer not to order any of that comic book. Right?
Yeah, but...
If all
I worry about that solution, because if you get to a point where they're savvy enough that they're selling and get, they get 100% of the profit from selling the hot cover, the Peach Momoko, whatever it is, the Scotty Young. If they're savvy enough that that's how that happens, then the retailer suddenly is not able to start selling any of those comics to any people in general, because they're all going to be through the publisher.
Right. But if we don't do that, we're not going to have any retailers anyway. Like, again, it's the best of the bad. So by if I can say as a retailer, and again, I'm not talking about open order covers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't consider those variants. They're just alternate covers. A variant is something that is somehow gate kept, be it a ratio, be it an exclusive, be it something like that.
Buying directly from the publisher.
Right. You only can buy those directly from the publisher. Right. Then all the A, B, C covers or whatever are what retailers sell.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if all the heat on a certain book is on a variant, and that's all anybody's going to sell, then I know not to spend my money that I could otherwise use to pay my rent buying that book. Right? I can use that same money then to, again, pay my rent, pay my employees, whatever, or order other things that people are buying from me. Here's a great example. At the same time I did the 125 Deadpools, right? One of my biggest sidelines was posters.
Yeah, sure.
And I was selling a ton of posters, and I had good margin on posters.
100%.
Yeah, we're getting there, Jay. The week I had to order 125 Deadpools, I couldn't afford to restock posters. Right? So when people came in looking for Star Wars posters, I didn't have any, and they went to Walmart. Right? If I would have known that that was going to be the outcome of that, I wouldn't have ordered them.
Yeah.
If I would have known that people could just go to Marvel directly and buy the lenticular variant that everybody wanted that I was trying to qualify for, I would have just ordered my posters and ordered my regular copies of Deadpool for my pull list.
Right.
Right.
So,
like,
but here's the monkey paw is going to curl scenario there that's going to happen. Is if that's the situation, we all know that some art comes in very late, right? Guess what art is going to come in late after FOC, after the shops have already made their orders? It's going to be the direct from publisher, oh my God, super hot, J. Scott Campbell, whatever cover. And then the retailer will be stuck with these copies when everybody's running over to the direct from the publisher variant in this particular example.
it's the best of the bad. It's still bad.
Yeah, I think personally, I think that's the possibly worst of the bad in some ways for me. Maybe second worst from the bad. But I like that it's a solution. I don't want to, I think that's
right.
good. It's an alternate solution.
Again, like I say, is if we're trying to find something that works for everybody, can I tell you the thing that works for everybody? We all just go home and stop. Right? That works for everybody, right? There is nothing that works for everybody. There's always going to be well, if this happens, then this happens. If that happens, then this, it's always going to happen. And the reality of the situation is that our current market is untenable. The whole thing is going to come crashing down like it's the Verrazano Narrows Bridge or whatever, the Tacoma Narrows Bridge in a windstorm. It's going to come crashing down. And that's going to be worse than anything because then we're all going to have to go home.
Yeah, no, I definitely don't want that. I see other solutions that bail us out.
Reef, this is exactly what happened in the late 90s.
Yeah.
To the letter.
Yep.
And we all know it. And we're all just going, well, whatever. We all know it. This industry is going to implode if we don't stop.
The problem is that it's really not that cut and dry because a lot of people do care about the healthy industry. And a lot of those are collectors out there that want to see some of these practices change. I can say that because I'm one of them. I know this isn't good for the industry. And I know there's a lot of people that look at what's happening now with the way covers are released, the way comic books are released, and they see the problem with it and they want a better solution.
This could save the industry.
Yeah. Let's get the Swifties involved. I mean, new readers are always good.
Between the Swifties and the people who buy Stanley Cups, if we start printing comics on Stanley Cups, we could save the industry.
Hey, I would love to get to a few of our comments.
Yeah, let's do it.
You want to do that? Okay. I want to go back to the first one that I think was saved it's something that I think clearly we both agree with. So you're not going to get probably much argument from us. But I always go for the A cover unless I have no choice as Psycho Phil. And I mean, that's the real irony here, by the way, is we're talking about the secondary and the tertiary market. Kyle was mentioning that earlier, the flippers. The funniest thing is that generally speaking, that original cover, the normal cover, the A cover, whatever you want to call it, depending on the book, is usually the best one anyway. There are exceptions to that rule, of course, but it's so funny that how many times it just works out to be true. The exceptions make it seem fanciful, like you've struck gold, like you won the lottery if you end up holding that cover, but it doesn't happen very often. If you try to play that game, it's like playing every single number on a roulette wheel, and it's not going to land.
Well, and it's interesting that the books that have the biggest value have no variants.
Yeah.
When you look at the most valuable books in the world, they don't have variants. They were good books that people kept.
Yeah.
Buying variants is, buying a lottery ticket that you're hoping pays out next week. not buying a stock that you hope pays out over time.
And then the sad truth is that for those people, a lot of them think it works because it does pay out every once in a while. Mm-hmm. But the problem is they probably blew way more money trying to get it to pay out than they actually did from it ever actually paying out. On a long enough timeline, they lose, or they get smart enough to be extremely selective. Let's see here. JD said, I would dispute that they do. I believe that they believe that brick and mortar is already dead, and they're making decisions that squeeze the last bit of cash out of the corpse.
Can I just real quick to give some context to this, as the sky is falling as I am on this topic, I am nowhere near the level of what's the word I'm looking for? And JD will admit this. We're all gonna die. That JD is. So, it's one of those. It's one of those things. JD tends to be more of a nihilist than I am, even though I'm pretty nihilistic on this one.
I get it. So the other one that we had saved from earlier was, sadly, variants, I believe, are a problem within the industry. I love the art, but way too many. And that's the thing is, with very few exceptions, I think most people agree with that. And that's why I think that there is the potential for a solution here that I know it won't be what Kyle's looking for. It probably won't fulfill his needs, but I think that has a possibility that there is a solution that could satisfy people, because I think most people agree with that statement, at least in principle, if not in practice, because they might still go buy 100 variants, but at the same time, I think that they understand that there's a problem there and would be open to a solution. Let's see here, the Godzilla -1 effect. Yeah, and that's good. I think a lot of people do that too. Not enough people, but I think a lot of people do pay more at a brick and mortar to support the store. And I, that example of that Kyle gave earlier, if the book is $50 on eBay, but it's $50 in the store, a lot of people will go buy it on eBay. And unfortunately, that is true in some cases. But I think there's also a good contingent of people out there that would be like, no, I'm going to support the store. And that's not always the case, though.
If I charge $50 in the store, I'm not saying people will go buy it on eBay. I'm saying it won't sell in my store.
Yeah, no,
because the people who are buying it to put it on eBay.
Yeah, I understand that point too. But there's a buyer at the end of that rainbow road anyway.
But not for me. There's just a middleman. I'm essentially a distributor at that point. Without the distributor discount.
If a book is $50 on eBay and a book is $50 in a store, I guarantee you that there are people that will buy it in the store because they're checking eBay and being like, well, I don't want to risk buying it on eBay. I'll buy it from the store that I'm in right now.
Sure. But again, if I'm counting on that sale coming on a Wednesday, the odds of that sale coming from someone who wants to sell it for more money than I've got on it are about 90%. About 90%.
Yeah.
So again, at that point, I'm just the distributor. I'm distributing my comic. I'm distributing that comic to you for you to go and do what I'm trying to do. So, I do think I just had a good idea.
Ooh, let's hear it.
I think we need to go to tiered pricing. And here's what I mean by that. Right now, when I buy a book from a distributor, I'm paying, based on whatever my discount is, somewhere between 50%, 45% of cover and 50% of cover. Some stores can get up to 60 depending on the size of the store, but call it between 45 and 50.
Okay.
Variants should be 75% off cover. Especially if they're gatefold, gate kept. So especially if they're a ratio or they're Marvel mathed. They need to be the discounts need to be steeper on variants than on regular covers. So that way, when I have to sell my variant, for $50 and somebody's going to put it on eBay for $100, I've still made enough money to cover the risk.
Yeah.
But instead, right now, I'm having to pay the same discount on the variant that I pay on the A cover. And something that's not being taken into account here are and I keep talking about it, but kind of just brushing it off, the extraneous costs that these stores are eating. Shipping from Diamond is so astronomical that the book I pay $1.25 for, I'm actually paying about $2.35 for, if you factor in shipping.
Yeah.
That's before I get it out of the box. Now, if I have to pay somebody $15 an hour to get it out of the box and put it on the wall, and then I got to pay somebody to help me market it, then I got to pay somebody to watch my store in addition to me, again, my costs are through the roof and there's no margin left. So,
absolutely.
No, it's staggered pricing. Pricing
it's
tiers.
It's a good alternate solution or in conjunction solution or a measure against a problem. Just like you're talking about getting the ratio for free or something like that if you ordered the copies. I want to talk about Castle FX, I guess, or CSFX. Yeah, okay. I don't think variants should go away, but I don't think there needs to be variants for every issue of every title. Maybe keep it selected and select issues and milestone number. And this is one of the things I was going to talk about as well. Is I get, depending on how often you relaunch the title, I get wanting to have some variants for Spider-Man 1 or some ratios for Spider-Man 1 or whatever it is.
Curtis Stelfox.
Oh, there we go. Because that makes sense, right? It's a, have for issue 50, for issue 100, you're doing something special to commemorate that event. Kind of makes sense. Also, if hey, guess what? We know that Miss Marvel is going to die in this, whatever, Spider-Man 25 or whatever it was. I can't remember off the top of my head. So we're going to do something special for that too. But the problem is you're then asking the publisher to kind of rein it in on themselves for those things. And you know what? I mean, without, I would prefer that system. It's just, I have to hope that they're going to draw the line in the right place, which I don't know that they're going to. But I would be more happy if that was the case, if it was only for those kinds of things, as opposed to here's this random, run filler issue that now has 70 different covers that most people aren't going to care about. It kind of, my concern is that it dilutes the interest in that comic book for the collector at the end of the day, because they look at it and they go, oh my gosh, there's so many options. They kind of get selection paralysis in some cases. Whereas if there was just one comic and you're just like, hey, give me that Spider-Man, I don't have to worry about ordering a certain cover, that could be easier for a lot of customers.
Well, and that would require publishers to do more than 6-issue arcs.
Yeah, exactly.
So again, when we talk about we have to find the best of the bad, that hurts publishers. Because publishers are relying on the fact that they sell more number ones than they sell number twos. So they're constantly trying to put out number ones. And if they're going to put variants on a book, they're going to put it on a number one because they're never going to get to a milestone issue because they're not publishing enough to get to a milestone issue.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Another major component to this issue. No pun intended. Reef, I agree. Not every issue that comes out. Yeah.
Right.
I also like the idea of selling a cover. Could be a sheet. You buy it and wrap it around the comic yourself to keep inside your bag. There's actually, there's been some cool innovation in that.
Marvel used to do that with Scotty Young's.
Yeah.
They'd send Scotty Young lithos to stores. And so if you couldn't get the Scotty Young variant, you could still get the litho and you just put it in your bag and board.
I mean, like, honestly, that's a avenue of opportunity because you can even have it be like, it adds something to the existing cover, like an extra layer that comes forward. And then if you
mean like an acetate?
Exactly.
Gee, I wonder if we're going to have gates around that.
Yeah, probably. But in this case, if it's not attached and it's just an extra fun thing that you can, add to the original cover.
Am I going to have to order 50 copies of the book to be able to open order the acetates? To be able to open order the cover lithos? Are you going to gatekeep those? Because what they did with the Scotty Youngs is you could order 2 packs of 10 for free. And then if you wanted to order any, they were more expensive than the book.
Oh, interesting.
More than that. They're more expensive than the stupid book.
Yeah. I think this is a good point. Frog Brawler says, no doubt that this industry is suffering, but it's not suffering in a vacuum. Yeah, that's true. I think there's a lot of combined factors that got us where we are right now. There's still some factors that, like we were talking about the 90s earlier, the echoes of that are super strong. And a lot of those factors are specific to this industry and what keeps happening. And to some extent to collectibles in general. Sports cards have seen similar issues in the past as well too. But I do, at the end of the day, though, I do agree that buying variants because you're going to love it is hopefully the missing piece there, Sicko, is that enough people have to do it.
Well, and buy them now before there's no place to buy them from.
Yeah, that too. All right. We were highlighting some chat. Let's see if we missed any chat that came through at the end there. I remember that in the late 90s, DC was the master of different color covers. Also Superman 75. Yeah. And then you guys were talking about the Spider-Boy as being the only variant I think that hit big. No, there's definitely been some variants that hit big. Like, for example, I had on the thumbnail, I have the Cobra Commander 1 in 100. And that is a comic book that is performing, above ratio, which is above $100 pretty regularly. There's some other stuff kind of like that too, like some of the unlock type stuff where there's a spawn coming out that's going to be limited to that retailers have to fulfill certain obligations to get. It's a limited number, signed by Todd McFarlane, and he's done a few of those. There's a lot of these things that they hit, and they hit with, like Kyle's saying, they hit with resellers and flippers, and but at the same time, I feel like I need to point out they also do hit with fans. I mean, there's people that are just like, oh my God, I want that. If they had an easier way to get that, I'm sure they'd be happier too, though, because it ends up becoming them fighting the flippers to get the comic book in the end anyway. And that's the problem.
Do you know who doesn't need the money of making retailers jump through hoops to get a variant? Todd McFarlane. I think that's the most asinine thing I've ever heard. Todd McFarlane on Spawn, one of the most consistently selling comics that has made that man more money than God, is going to ask retailers to jump through hoops to get a variant that who knows what the limit is on how many they're going to be able to get, how many they're going to be able to sell, and what they're going to be able to sell it for, to drive artificial scarcity, to drive that price up. Really, Todd? That's how you feel you best represent your business? You're a moron. Give them away for free. You can afford it. Sell the Sammy Sosa baseball. You can afford it.
I don't know if that's going to get you that much these days. The old Sosa ball might be a little devalued. But on the same breath, I will say that I do applaud McFarlane for keeping the price of the book low, which is another thing that I think needs to happen. So I give credit. And I think
that's part of why it's so consistent, right?
Yeah. Spawn
is crazy high quality and always has been, and I can't knock it for that.
Yeah.
The price has always been right. It has always matched the quality and been very affordable for the consumer, so I can't argue with that. But Todd is the king of saying, you know what'll make me a bunch of money? If I screw retailers. He's the king of it.
So I mostly wrapped up with the chat there that I want to hit on. Did you see any comments you wanted to make sure that we brought to the forefront?
No.
Okay.
They're talking about ash cans and stuff, and ash cans are good ideas. But again, the thing we have to remember, right? This. Image across the board has done a good job of keeping their prices commensurate with the quality book they're putting out. whereas other publishers have not. The quality of the books has gone down and the price has gone up. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
And I think what Sicko is saying is correct. You can't afford anything Marvel puts out at $14. And don't get me wrong, I recognize my own hypocrisy in this area because I like 1 in 100 variants as much as the next guy, and I'll buy 1 in 100 variants. But you know what I'll do to get a 1 in 100 variant? I'll buy 100 copies of the book. No risk to my retailer. Right? I pay up front. Here's the cash for 100 copies of that book.
It's worth pointing out, I know retailers that's the only way they will sell ratios to people is, okay, yeah, sure, you can do that. Here's what it'll cost you. And they might give them maybe a little bit better pricing on that too, and they might not. Depends on the retailer.
Yeah, I mean, when I buy 100 copies, she charges me 50 cents over his price. So if he's paying $1.25, I'm paying $1.75 a copy.
Yeah.
But I'm buying all 100 plus the ratio variant at whatever he chooses to charge me for the ratio variant. So if he wants to charge me $100 for the ratio variant, fine. Right? Because he also has to cover his shipping.
Yeah.
He also has to cover his costs. Fine. But so I recognize the hypocrisy in me coming down the hill at this. But I also just got off the phone before the show with a retailer friend of mine who is begging me to loan him money to keep his store open because he took a bath on a bunch of variants. Because they were hot and people were all about them when they were ordered. And then he winds up getting stuck with a bunch of copies of the books and the bottom fell out of the variants.
Yeah.
Like, he's going to lose his store if I don't bail him out. Or if somebody doesn't bail him out. It's that quick. And it's that simple. Right? The thing about this variant conversation is that no matter what we do to fix it, somebody's going to have to take the hit. And if that means, guess what? Guys like Garrett Gunn, who have made a lot of money selling variants for their books, can't do that anymore, fine. If it means that publishers like SourcePoint and Scout and Vault and some of these companies can't survive because they're not making money on these variants that are getting reported on these apps, that sucks, but it is what it is. If it means retailers have to close because they can't make money selling these variants, then that is what it is. But unfortunately, if we want this industry to be around, we've got to stop trying to kill each other and start focusing on what can we do to make everybody at least somewhat better. The best of the bad. Because there is no good answer. There really isn't. Somebody's going to get hurt one way or the other. It's going to be the collector. It's going to be the retailer. It's going to be the distributor. It's going to be the publisher. Somebody's going to get hurt. Or everybody's going to get hurt. So if we can't find a way to find the best of the bad, then I would go buy as many comics as you can right now because this industry is not going to be around in 5 years. Somebody mentioned that 10 years ago, they said print comics are all going to go digital. What happened to that? We found the best of the bad. We took less quality cover stock. We took less quality paper. We let the prices go up. Right? And that saved print. We found the best of the bad. Everybody got hurt. But nobody got killed. And that's the difference. We've got to stop trying to cannibalize each other, like I said earlier. And it sucks.
Yeah.
That's our best option. But younger readers don't care about variants. Younger readers don't care about floppies. Younger readers care about stories. It's why they're reading manga. It's why they're going on some of these apps like Saturday AM and Webtoon and some of these places. They're going where they can get the stories. They're not buying covers. They could care less about cover art. My nephews are obsessed with comics. They couldn't tell you who draws a cover. They couldn't tell you who draws the book. but they can tell you what's happening in the book.
Yeah, but okay. So I think this is something that's extremely important to me, and I tend to very much agree with this that we do need younger readers and that they are required. And here's the reason why. We need readers. We need people into comic books. And like it or not, yeah, sure, they don't know about the variant, or they do like the cover art. That is still a big factor. A lot of kids will buy a comic book because of the cover. We all know that people are generally drawn to the cover, just like they will for a book at a bookstore. But the point is that if you have enough younger people getting into comic books that are reading and they're focusing more on the story, you do shift what the customer base is away from some of the flipping and some of that to more of a, I'm reading this title every month because I enjoy it.
There's a misconception there, though.
Let's hear it.
My 9 and 10-year-old nephews aren't buying books from comic book stores. They're on Saturday AM. They're on Webtoon.
Right.
They're on some of these other platforms where there aren't covers. They don't exist.
Yeah.
They don't care about cover art because the way they consume the media, the covers don't exist.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is, right? Like you have to keep in mind that kids aren't buying comics right now in physical comic book stores in the very large numbers. Right. I'm saying that you could get more of that going, and it would be beneficial, as well as I love digital. I'm all for having the digital readers there as well. I think I'm a big believer in the high tides will raise all ships when it comes to that. You want to have more readers. I don't care if they're reading digitally, print, because there's always going to be some print readers. There's always going to be some digital readers. The ratio doesn't necessarily matter as much because it will generally fuel interest in the other. If you have people that are into reading digitally, a lot of them eventually walk into a comic book shop and want to read. Maybe they want to buy a physical trade. Maybe they want to buy an omnibus. They're eventually going to come in there and they're going to buy some of those shirts, some of those action figures. There's going to be some money generated from that. And that is important for the industry. It's important for us to have the health of the properties, the health of the characters, the health of everything along the line. We need more, not less, when it comes to readership and buyers.
Well, and here's the thing, right? The reason they're doing that is because it's affordable. They have access to those. Someone's got to give them money, right? To have access to go into a comic book store and buy books, they've got to be able to afford them. They can afford Webtoon. They can afford these other things, right? It's cheaper.
Yeah.
And again, it's changing the way they consume things. I equate it to cord cutting, right, from cable. Right? People got away from cable because it was so expensive, and streaming offered them exactly what they want, exactly how they wanted it, when they wanted it. And then streaming blew up, and now it's driving the prices of cable back down because the cost of all these streaming services cost as much as cable did. But the price of cable's coming back down because they're losing subscribers. So they've got to make it tenable, right? Like, we have to find this equilibrium, but the only way that works is if streaming is not trying to cannibalize cable, because they still want that content that these cable, that these CBS, ABC, NBC, Fox are making, right? For their platforms. But at the same time, cable's not saying don't go to Netflix to watch those movies, or don't go to Netflix to watch or don't go to Peacock to watch The Office. Only ever watch it on our channel. They're not saying that. They found a way to kind of buoy everything. We're way over time.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to hit this real quick. Do you guys think that Marvel and DC missed the boat on younger readers and promoting? I remember back in the day, Marvel and DC would push hard. I don't see that now. Here's where I think the mistake happened. And I don't think it's a bad mistake. I think it's just a mistake. They let Dave Pilkey take over Book Fair. The first Marvel thing I ever bought was a Spider-Man book at Scholastic Book Fair. I think that's the mistake, is that they saw where the money was going and they just went for it rather than providing the alternatives. So I think some of it is that, some of it's they're not promoting, but some of it is, again, they're chasing that dollar now rather than that dollar in 10 years. So
And for my answer on that question, and I think it does tie in a little bit to what we were just talking about, is the places where people are, that's where you need to go. And so when it comes to getting younger readers involved, there are platforms out there where, a big publisher, if they wanted to, they could get on there and they could offer a budget line, a cheaper collection of comics. I remember when DC was first wanting to go into to make a major push towards digital, they launched, and I don't think it was the best lineup of books, but they launched a 99-cent issue digital only comic book for, you had a Superman, you had a Batman, you had a Harley Quinn that was out for a little while. Not necessarily the best lineup per se. I would have made it more younger reader focused and maybe pushed out some different platforms, but I think that kind of model could work. Doing stuff like getting out there on the Nick Jr. apps and that kind of stuff, and talking about, hey, here's this collection of Spidey and His Amazing Friend comics. You're watching the show, go read the comic books now. For $5 you can get 10 issues or something like that. Even if you just do that, just a special run for each show, that's a cross promotion kind of a thing. I know a lot of kids in the 80s started reading comic books because of things like Thundercats and G.I. Joe and Transformers, and but they were putting out decent product. You can't say it was necessarily the best product in some cases, but it was usually decent, and it would make them want to read other comic books. I think a lot of us can identify with the idea that once we got into the idea of reading comic books, a lot of us gravitated towards other things in comic books, and it kind of helped grow our interest. And I think that's a big piece of the puzzle for me.
No, it's true. I mean, I think, like I said, to wrap this up and to get us out in only an hour and a half. If we're talking about, and maybe this is a topic for a future show, is how do we get young readers?
Yeah.
Right. Maybe this is a topic we need to cross here. But on our topic of variants, you even see it with self-publishing. Used to be when people self-published a book, they'd do one cover, right? They'd go to Kickstarter. This is the cover. If we make a bunch of extra money, we'll add in extra things and maybe we'll do a second cover. Now you see a Kickstarter launch with 13 covers.
Yeah.
I don't blame anybody. Like Dan Wickline's got a Kickstarter right now. It's got a ton of covers on them, and they're all beautiful, and you can buy whichever one you want, and they're all the same price. Great. I don't necessarily see that as being the same as a variant, but we've lost this. Let's focus on doing one thing and doing it perfectly. And we've started to focus on, let's do a whole bunch of stuff and get as much money out as quickly as possible. And regardless of if anybody cares if there's an issue 2 or a second book or another thing, we're going to get out as fast as we can.
Yeah.
And it's killing literally everyone. So the fix to this problem, guys, and it's interesting that we are the ones having this conversation, because this a month from now, well, not a month from now, because February doesn't have 29 days, but you know what I mean. I'm going to be surrounded by retailers and publishers and distributors all in one place, all in the same hotel, all in the same room. And if you think I got worked up tonight, just wait. It will be like the Royal Rumble in there. Because unfortunately, the only people who could fix this are the people who are making money right now. And they all have to agree to make less money in favor of saving everybody else. The only people who can fix this are publishers and flippers and distributors. Those are it. The regular collector can't fix this. The retailer can't fix this. The average fan can't fix this. Even the creators can't fix this. But the people who are making money off of these variants, off of the fact that we're siphoning funds from every corner of the world, the only people who could fix this are the people who are making money. That's publishers, distributors, and flippers. and they all have to agree to take less money. I'm not saying a lot less. I'm saying some less. And they're not going to do it. They're just not. And if they do, they'll be, they'll have saved the industry, right? But it's not how it works. And we all know it's not how it works. So we're stuck with this best of the bad. We're stuck with trying to make the best of a bad situation. The people who could actually fix it aren't interested in fixing it. And at the end of the day, we're all going to suffer because of it.
Yeah, my final thought on this topic is it goes along the lines of a lot of issues in the comic book industry that I see. And it does come from, to quote the great Dr. Ian Malcolm, you're so preoccupied with whether or not you could, you didn't stop to ask whether or not you should. And that's...
Wait, time out. I was today years old when I learned that quote was from Jurassic Park.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's kind of how I feel about it in summation.
I need to go be alone with my ignorance.
So what you need to do is go watch Jurassic Park.
I thought that they took it and put it in Jurassic Park because somebody else had said it before.
You know what? If that quote traces back to somebody else, please let me know, because I'd hate to be the spreader of misinformation. But as far as I know, that's his quote, the script's quote, I should say. Anyways, folks, we did have the link posted up above in the chat there in the live stream. If you want to suggest a topic for us to talk about, please do so. We will not necessarily disclose our topic for next week tonight, because we are still going to be working on that background, but we will have a fun topic for you next week. It is currently blank, so I will. I'm getting a sideways head look there. Yeah, there we go.
Wait, did I forget something?
No. Okay. No, it's currently blank on our sheet because we needed to move some things around. So we're gonna get that figured out. This is where you going and filling out that link comes through, because I guarantee you there's somebody watching this video, this live stream right now, that could go fill that form out, and they would have an idea that we would look at and be like, oh my gosh, we need to talk about that next week. So
especially if you think I'm full of crap. Like, if you think I'm wrong on this topic, give us a topic, give us a take on this topic that we can revisit it and maybe set me straight.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of opportunity for that. Like, don't just be like, oh, Kyle's full of shit and not say anything. No. Give us a topic and let us approach this maybe from a different angle.
Yeah. I mean, and that's true of anything we've talked about before, anything that you can think of that, and if, they don't have to be these grand sweeping things too. It could be something that's currently going on in the community that you have an interest in, that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, I had to, obviously the scientist part, I had to change the quote a little bit, but I appreciate you pasting in the quote there. You comic book publishers. No. But on that note, folks, we've been Kyle and Bronze Age Nerd, and we are the EXP. Please comment below if you're watching this on the rewind, or if you want to do that after the stream, let us know what you thought of the stream. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe, hit the bell. We are trying to have a number happen for some special reasons I can't disclose. But if we get to 2,500 subscribers,
I did it yesterday on the show.
Okay. I didn't see that part. So
we have new content that we are keeping behind the door until we get to a certain number of subscribers. And by the way, there are several goals there, right? So 2,500 unlocks the next level. Then unlocks the next piece of content. Then there's another piece of content for 2,750, another piece of content for 3,000, another piece of content for 2,220 or 3,225. So, or 3,250.
I constantly feel like I'm going to get in trouble disclosing things, so I'm always careful. But what I can say, I think I can say this very safely, is I know the bigger this channel gets and the more you folks are interacting and sharing this stuff, the cooler things you will see on this channel.
Bro,
unlock some awesome stuff.
I have a whole show that's just based about food, nerdy food. That is like our furthest goal, and I can't do the math that far out. But just know it's out there.
Silver play button.
Yeah. No, it's not silver play button, but it's close.
So. Hey, someday. Yeah. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching, and have a great night. And we'll catch you next week on Devil's Advocates.
Join the party. Head over to our Linktree to find all the links for everywhere the experience is all the time.